Wanted to show my shirt. Fools just want to have fun. Hey guys, this is Allison from Allykatkreations. How are you? This camera thing that just keeps annoying. Anywho. Share and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. And if you get anything from my work, a connected dot, an epiphany, a mind-blown moment, a mushroom cloud moment, a new book to read, a new author to explore, please consider supporting my work. All the links are below the video. And I want to thank everybody who has at least liked, subscribed, and I get messages from people, and I really thank you all, that are getting something from what I am talking about. Like, you're resonating with it, and that means the world to me, and it gives me and serves me a greater purpose, and that's continuing doing this. So I want to thank everybody who has been leaving me messages and telling me that what I'm doing, you're getting something out of, you're getting new books. And thank you to supporting the authors of these books and the people who put the work in. It's really important. I'm pondering writing my own. I have to organize my brain though before I do that. But yes, I eventually will have that calling to sit and just get it down on paper. I know you can't see this, but like above me, I have a shit ton of books behind me. On one of the bookshelves, I have a continuation of what doesn't fit above my desk, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and I have upstairs 17 journals I've written in my entire life since I was probably in teenage years. I used to write in journals all the time. I kind of still do, but not as much. So, sorry, I know we're here for the Urantia book and not Allison's ranting hour. But I just really wanted to thank everybody for supporting me and the continued support. I know some of you have been riding this ride, and we're 1 month away for 2 years. 2 years. And I'm in a new situation, yes. But I'm slowly getting back to where I was, and I don't like that feeling. Anywho, we're going to ignore that. I'm going to ignore that. I'm going to transcend that energy. It's real. It's reality. But I hope something transpires. Someone helps figure out some purposeful thing that I'm not thinking of that can help. So I'm going to read paper 53. The Mighty Book. I believe I already read this, but I'm going to read it again, even if I did read it, because it needs to be read again. And I just want to put this, and this is why I'm starting out so lighthearted. I'm going to probably, since I read this last year, probably. I have a feeling that I'm going to have a similar outlook to what I first had, but I think I have more an in-depth analysis of Lucifer. Because watching people channel Lucifer, hello, having my own experiences with this entity, I don't see this entity as bad. It never was. Again, if you take a look at totality and you understand, if we all create and manifest existence, we manifest stories of all these deities. We all collectively come up with this big dream story. And a lot of the times, a lot of people don't realize that these stories were already fed to us and we just make it material. And it makes it so. So that is a very hard thing to grasp. It was hard for me at first to grasp this concept. But after listening to people who can channel this energy, they're basically saying, like, you change, each entity, each consciousness shifts in each density. So the person you got that came down to give us an experience of duality and free will and choice, which was supposedly Lucifer, we all deem as the devil and evil and bad and the adversary and all this stuff, but maybe that's the point. And someone had to play that role, and it happened to be him. It's just a thought. It's just something that I know I resonate with. I've read a lot of his, there's books on his channelings. Pamela Erlin channels him, and some other people. I've seen it. I really urge you guys, if you're interested, because the rebellion, we're going to go into it from the Urantia Urtite collective. This is their perspective. Again, we all have different perspectives. We all have different encodings within our DNA that helps us respond or not respond to certain things. It gets very, very, if you start analyzing everything like I have been doing, because I need to get a Zen flow in my life, it all starts making sense. But without further ado, paper 53, the Lucifer Rebellion. Lucifer was a brilliant primary Lananadek, son of Nebadon. He had experienced service in many systems, had been a high counselor of his group, and was distinguished for wisdom, sagacity, and efficiency. Lucifer was number 37 of his order, and when commissioned by the Melchizedeks, he was designated as one of the 100 most able and brilliant personalities and more than 700,000 of his kind. From such a magnificent being, through evil and error, he embraced sin and now is numbered as one of the 3 cistern sovereigns in Nebadon who have succumbed to the urge and self-surrendered to the sophistry of superious personal liberty, rejection of universal alliance and allegiance, and disregard of fraternal obligations, blindness to cosmic relationships. I disagree. But that's okay. Perception. In the universe of Nebadon, the domain of Christ Michael, there are 10,000 systems of inhabited worlds. In all the history of Lananadek's sons, in all their work throughout these thousands of systems, and at the universe headquarters, only 3 cistern sovereigns have ever been found in contempt of the government of the Creator's Son. There's so much, but I want to read. It's long. But just know I don't resonate. And again, you can, and that's okay. And that's a perception. It's your perception. There's no right or wrong, right? Until we pass over and ascend, we only get portions of the truth, like the end all be all truth. The leaders of rebellion. Lucifer was not an ascendant being. He was a created son of the local universe, and of him It was said, "You were perfect in all your ways from the day you were created till unrighteousness was found in you." Many times had he been in council with the Most Highs of Urantia, and Lucifer reigned upon the holy mountain of God, the administrative mount of Jerusalem, for he was the chief executive of a great system of 607 inhabited worlds. Lucifer was a magnificent being, a brilliant personality. He stood next to the Most High Fathers of the constellations in the direct line of universal authority. Notwithstanding Lucifer's transgression, subordinate intelligence refrained from showing him disrespect and disdain prior to Michael's bestowal on Urantia. Even the archangel of Michael, at the time of Moses' resurrection, did not bring against him an accusing judgment, but simply said, "The judge rebuke you." Judgment in such matters belongs to the Ancients of Days, the rulers of the super universe. Lucifer is now the fallen and disposed sovereign of Satania. Self-contemplation is most disastrous, even to the exalted personalities of the celestial world. Of Lucifer, it was said, "Your heart was lifted up because your beauty, your corrupt, your wisdom because of your brightness." Your olden prophet saw the sad estate when he wrote, "How are you fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How are you cast down, you who dared to confuse the worlds?" Very little was heard of Lucifer on Urantia, owing to the fact that he assigned his first lieutenant, Satan, first lieutenant, different beings, to advocate his cause on your planet. Satan was a system sovereign. He entered fully into the Lucifer insurrection. The devil is none other than Caligasta, the disposed planetary prince of Urantia and son of the secondary order of Lananadex. At the time Michael was on Urantia in the flesh, Lucifer, Satan, and Caligasta were leagued together to effect the miscarriage of his bestowal mission, but they signally failed. So even here says Lucifer and Satan are two different beings. In the Anunnaki story, it's Enki and Lil. Marduk being Satan. Enlil being Satan. And Enki being Lucifer. But there's aspects of it. Or the devil could be Enlil. But regardless, fallen from heaven or fallen into materialism. Fallen in material form. Oh, and what God are we talking about? What creator are we talking about? Because Mr. Michael over here is a creator too. Is it the prime creator? I'm only saying this as a devil's advocate to start asking you the deeper questions you need to be asking yourself when reading books. Not because I'm being an asshole. Just let's put that honestly out there. I'm not. I want you to think a little deeper. Abaddon was the chief of the staff of Caligasta. He followed his master into rebellion and has ever since acted as chief executive of the Urantia rebels. Beelzebub was the leader of the disloyal midway creatures who allied themselves with the forces of the traitorous Caligasta. The dragon eventually became the symbolic representation of the evil past personages. Upon the triumph of Michael, Gabriel came down from Salvington and bound the dragon, all the rebel leaders, for an age. Of the Jerusalem seraphic rebels it is written, and the angels who kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, he has reserved in short chains of darkness to the judgment of the greater day. And I want to say this, I'm going to get this validation clarification on Saturday, because I'm going to talk to my spirit guides, and I am reaching straight up to that archangel collective I belong to. And I can tell you right now, Hillel works with me, and so does Gabriel. And there's 5 or 6 others. It's the will and intention you choose to do in this lifetime that makes you a positive polarized human being or a negative polarized human being. Evil is a part of this construct. It is meant to be. And in 1 or 5 million of our lifetimes, whenever you lived, you played a role, whether it be good or bad. And remember, I always say this to people, you are the devil in someone's story. You're the bad person. You're the wicked one. You're evil. Whatever it is that they're inflicting a judgment upon you because of an action you might have done. And again, that they're not seeing as a catalyst that they needed for further soul exploration. I had an ex, I say it all the time, and I'm not afraid to say it, who really shattered my world. But when I understood that he was a part of my contract, I asked him to be a dick, and I asked him to hurt and shatter my heart into a million pieces. I asked him to do that because I needed this lifetime, that soul growth to learn from. So we were a devil in some aspect or form. We were some evil, negative, polarized entity in a form that played a role for somebody or for a group of people that did some damage. And that's the role that we play. Karma is a little tricky when it comes to that because we chose those roles for soul growth, and we chose the roles because you're rich, you're poor, you're good, you're bad, you're the victim, the victimizer, you're the bully, you're the bullied. It goes back and forth because these are the experiences that God needs to have experienced through you. So if you come to neutrality and you stop looking at everything as good and evil, but as experiences that need to happen, you're better off. Sorry, again, I'm going off in tangents because I think it's very important that people start going a little deeper and thinking and being like, well, because this book says it, Lucifer is evil. There was a rebellion and it was horrible. Okay, but look at the factions and what's behind them. These are the Urtites that wrote this book. The Alwaspe book is a Jehovian Anunnaki. They're the fallen. They're all fallen. So are they eschewing the fall? Dragons are not bad. I have dragon guides. Most people have dragon guides, and they're freaking amazing. Why is the Asian culture all decorated in dragons? And they're not evil. They're beautiful, spiritual beings. Why did they make them evil? Just some things to start considering and thinking about. And when you read other work and you start going into these very difficult topics, because we've been brainwashed to think one way, and you start thinking in other directions, you kind of open up your mind to, oh, that might make sense. Again, I'm here to help validate some people that might not feel validated because everybody tells them they're wrong. There's no right or wrong. It's perception. It's metaphysics. It sucks sometimes because we want those things. The causes of rebellion. Lucifer and his first assistant, Satan, had reigned on Jerusalem for more than 500,000 years when in their hearts they began to array themselves against the universal Father and his vice-regent son Michael. There was no peculiar or special conditions in the system of Satania which suggested or favored rebellion. It is our belief, it says it, our belief. So there's no absolutes here. There's a belief. And you can believe anything. You can believe that I'm the spaghetti monster god that everybody puts colanders on their heads and takes their DMV photos. Yeah, that's a real thing. Go look it up. It is our belief that the idea took origin and form in Lucifer's mind, and that he might have instigated such a rebellion no matter where he might have been stationed. So here is something I want to point out. The belief. It took origin, form in Lucifer's mind. Now, if you comprehend the prime, the one that sparked this entire existence, whose thoughts are you thinking? The all, the absolute source, your individuated part of source. So all the thoughts in your head, all the epiphanies, everything that you're getting is out of the ether and from it all, the prime creator, all. So in Lucifer's mind, God, source, gave him that thought. Just think about that and think about your own life. I know. You can listen to the other episode. It's all the way at the beginning of the Urantia series. But I think it's very, very vital for me to project these things because it's necessary. Because again, everything that we know is skewed and very backwards and reversed. So we have to take everything into consideration. And again, I'm not here to plead that Lucifer is a good thing or a bad thing. It's an energy. It's something we all constructed together and we put in place and manifested, materialized thinking on it. Lucifer first announced his plans to Satan, but it required several months to corrupt the mind of this able and brilliant associate. However, when once converted to the rebellion theories, he became a bold and earnest advocate of self-assertion and liberty. Liberté! No one ever suggested rebellion to Lucifer. The idea of self-assertion in opposition to the will of Michael and to the plans of the Universal Father as they are represented in Michael had its origin in his own mind. And where his thoughts come from, again, source, prime creator, not the one that made the universe, this super universe. We individuate, we come down, and we are given missions in creating a grid for the matrix. I know that I helped create fourth density, fifth and sixth. I contributed a lot to that. And I'm still working on it in my astral form, in my light body. I go out in my sleep and I go upstairs. I've seen many of that stuff. It's okay if you think I need drugs and I'm hallucinating. Chill. But just consider these things. His relations with the Creator's Son had been intimate, and always cordial. At no time prior to the exaltation of his own mind did Lucifer openly express dissatisfaction about the universe administration, notwithstanding his silence for more than 100 years of standard time. The union of days on Salvington had been reflectivating to Uversa that all was not at peace in Lucifer's mind. How would they know that if he's not a part of, he's rebelling against the prime creator or against Michael? Is Michael really a good archangel? Half and half, because we all are in duality. Just saying. This information was also communicated to Creator Sun and the constellation fathers Norlanadax. Throughout the period, Lucifer became increasingly critical of the entire plan of universe administration, but always professed wholeheartedly loyal to the supreme rulers. His first outspoken disloyalty was manifested on the occasion of the visit of Gabriel to Jerusalem, just a few days before the open proclamation of the Lucifer Declaration of Liberty. Gabriel was so profoundly impressed with the certainty of the impending outbreak that he went direct to Urantia to confer with the constellation fathers regarding the measures to be employed in case of open rebellion. It is very difficult to point out the exact cause or causes which finally culminated in the Lucifer Rebellion. We are certain of only one thing, and that is whatever these first beginnings were, they had their origin in Lucifer's mind. There must have been a pride of self that nourished itself to the point of self-deception, so that Lucifer, for a time, really persuaded himself that his contemplation of rebellion was actually for the good of the system, if not of the universe. By the time his plans had developed to the point of disillusionment, no doubt he had gone too far from his original and mischief-making pride to permit him to stop. At some point in this experience, he became insincere, and evil evolved into deliberate and willful sin. That this happened is proved by the subsequent conduct of this brilliant executive. He was a long offered opportunity for repentance, but only some of his subordinates ever accepted the proffered mercy. The faithful of days of Urantia, on the request of the constellation fathers, in person presented the plan of Michael for the saving of this flagrant rebels, but always was the mercy of the Creator Son rejected and rejected with increasing contempt and disdain. I can't imagine why, because we needed to have the experiment. Just like upstairs is very much like how they're describing that there's different jobs, there's different levels of things, there's different like capacities that you take on and jobs you do, all this stuff. It was rejected. Why? Because Source wanted to have fun in an experiment. We're the experiment. Congratulations. The Lucifer Manifesto. Whatever the early origins of trouble in the hearts of Lucifer and Satan and final outbreak took from as the Lucifer Declaration of Liberty, the cause of the rebels was stated under three heads. One, the reality of the Universal Father. Lucifer changed that the Universal Father did not really exist, that physical gravity and space energy were inherent in the universe, and that the Father was a myth invented by the Paradise Sons to enable them to maintain the rule of the universes in the Father's name. He denied that personality was a gift of the Universal Father. He even imitated that the first finalators were in collusion with the Paradise Sons to foist fraud upon all creation, since they never brought back a very clear-cut idea of the Father's actual personality, as it is discernible on Paradise. He traded on reverence as ignorance. The charge was sweeping, terrible, and blasphemous. It was this veiled attack upon the finalators that no doubt influenced the ascendant citizens that on Jerusalem to stand firm and remain steadfast in resistance to all the rebels' proposals. Play devil's advocate, literally here. Play devil's advocate. What happens if the factions that are talking to us through this book are evil and are the evil ones? And what happens if Lucifer is the light and wanted the best for us? Now look at the Bible and do the same thing. I'm not here to say worship him. No, worship yourself. Go within. Worship the prime, the all that made everything. Every grain of particles, quarks, quintessence, quantum, everything. All of that fun stuff of source, the all, the prime creator. Not these delineations. Just think about it. I'm not saying believe it, just think about that concept. 2, the universe government of the creator's son, Michael, Lucifer, contended that the local system should be autonomous. He protested against the right Michael, the creator's son, to assume sovereignty of Nebadon in the name of hypothetical paradise father and require all personalities to acknowledge allegiance to this unseen father. He asserted that the whole plan of worship was a clever scheme to aggrandize the paradise sons. He was willing to acknowledge Michael as his creator father, but not as his God and rightful ruler. And there is an absolute point in that. Most bitterly did he attack the right of the Ancients of Days, foreign progenitors, potenents, to interfere in the affairs of the local system and universe. These rulers he denounced as tyrants and usurpers. He exhorted his followers to believe that none of these rulers could do aught to interfere with the suppression of complete home rule if men and angels only had the courage to assert themselves and boldly claim their rights. And again, he has a fucking point. He contended that the executioners of the ancient days would be barred from functioning in the local system if the native beings would only assert their independence. He maintained that immorality was inherent in the system personalities, that resurrection was natural and automatic, and that all beings would live eternally except for the arbitrary and unjust acts of the executioners of the Ancients of Days. 3, the attack upon the universal plan of ascendant mortal training. Lucifer maintained that far too much time and energy were expended upon the scheme of so thoroughly training ascended mortals in the principles of universe administration, principles which he alleged were unethical and unsound. He protested against the age-long program for preparing the mortals of space for some unknown destiny and pointed to the presence of the finaliter corpse on Jerusalem as proof that these mortals had spent ages of preparation for some destiny of pure fiction. When derision, he pointed out that the finaliters had encountered a destiny no more glorious than to be returned to a humble sphere similar to those of their origin. He intimidated that they had been debauched by overmuch discipline and prolonged training, and that they were in reality traitors to their mortal fellows, since they were now cooperating with the scheme of enslaving all creation. That ascenders should enjoy the liberty of individual self-determination. He challenged and condemned the entire plan of mortal ascension as sponsored by the paradise sons of God and supported by the infinite spirit. And it was with such a declaration of liberty that Lucifer launched his orgy of darkness and death. I don't usually drink on screen, but my water needs me. That was beautiful. I told you I'm going to have a whole different point of view since last year. I see the point now that I've gone through the book, and I'll tell you why. Because it's happening in our paradigm right now. We can't skip densities, right? We like physically in our material body here, we have to go and ascend to different levels where our own personal soul vibratory state is. And then it should be, which Lucifer is saying here for his scheme, it should be up to us. Again, we wrote our script already, wrote it. So when we pass, if we pass in our bodies or we're moving with our bodies, we wrote that in for us. Why should I have to sit knowing that I volunteered and that I come directly from source itself, volunteered to be here embodied? Why should I have to be stuck going through all the stuff again when I already did it already? Once I'm done with my mission here and whatever is done, and this is talked about in the spiritual community, that some people are holding the frequency here so that other people can come past, so they can ascend. But because many of us are incarnated versions of our soul is of 6th, 7th density, that when our physical vehicles dies, we will bypass everything we already went through. Remember, a lot of us already graduated. We already went up. We came back down to help humanity, to wake people up. Why, according to this book, I would be stuck having to go through lifetime after lifetime of my soul's journey to go through these schools and then ascend, where you're not guaranteed paradise right away. Well, maybe some people might be ready for paradise already now. That, again, Lucifer is being portrayed as some evil thing when he really just wants liberty and freedom. He doesn't want to have systems. It should be up to the individual soul for whatever choice you orchestrated for yourself with source itself, the prime creator. You orchestrated it for yourself. I'm fully in believement of that. We wrote our timelines. The freedom of will is, again, like I said, you farting. That's your body making a fart. You didn't write that in your script. It just comes out. You burping, you eating, you waking up at whatever time. You didn't write those things. You wrote major events in your life that's going to shift you. You put catalysts in your life so that you make big changes. And those are the tests, whether you pass or not, that you're going through. Now, we were stuck on a loop. We come back and we come back. Not all of us have come back. Many of us ascended already. Many of us didn't have to come back. We choose and volunteer to come back because we want to help. There's a huge difference there. And again, my perceptions, my thoughts, you don't have to agree with me, and that's okay. I'm just giving you another olive branch to look at, because a lot of people reflect on this like, oh, it's bad. Well, no, walk your middle path, because even, again, inside you, you have a bad side. For the old grandmas who don't like cursing, like I bet you used to curse, you said something out of your mouth that was like left field, right? For you, it's normal. There's a lot of people who will go to die on the sword for this. Walk God's, the all prime creator's path, which is acknowledging both sides, understanding you are a component of those both sides. Ignoring it will lead you to have to go back and do shadow work. and understanding your other side of your aspects of yourself that are dark and not, listen, that's why we're here, is to explore those things, not act upon them, not kill somebody, not do anything that would harm another being. But why do those thoughts come up in your head, and deal with them? A lot of people are in this fold right now. See the middle path, because you have a right and you have a left. There are good and evil inside of you. Don't get me wrong. It's up to you to choose which side you belong, which polarity you're expressing in this lifetime. Outbreak of the rebellion. The Lucifer Manifesto was issued at the annual conclave of Satania on the Sea of Glass in the presence of the assembled hosts of Jerusalem on the last day of the year, about 200,000 years ago, Urantia time. Satan proclaimed that worship could be accorded the universe forces, physical, intellectual, and spiritual, but the allegiance could be acknowledged only to the actual and present ruler, Lucifer, the friend of man and angels, and the God of liberty. Self-assertion was the battle cry of the Lucifer Rebellion. One of his chief arguments was that if self-government was good and right for the Melchizedeks and other groups, it was equally good for all orders of intelligence. He was bold and persistent in the advocacy of the equality of mind and the brotherhood of intelligence. He maintained that all governments should be limited to the local planets and their voluntary confederation into the local systems. Now, what's happening in our paradigm, world, country, insert state, county? What is going on? Think hard about what I just read and apply it to now. All other supervision be disallowed. He promised the planetary princes they should rule the worlds as supreme executives. He denounced the location of legislative activities on the constellation headquarters and the conduct of judicial affairs on the universal capital. He contended that all these functions of government should be concentrated on the system capitals, and proceeded to set up his own legislative assembly and organize his own tribunals under the jurisdiction of Satan. And he directed that the princes on the apostate worlds do the same. The entire administrative cabinet of Lucifer went over in a body and were sworn in publicly as the officers of the administration of a new head of the liberated worlds and systems. My galactic friends, what's happening right now? While there had been two previous rebellions in Abaddon, they were in distant constellations. Lucifer held these insurrections were unsuccessful because the majority of the intelligences failed to follow their leaders. He contended that majorities rule, that mind is infallible. The freedom allowed him by the universe rulers apparently sustained many of his nefarious contentions. He defied all of his superiors, yet they apparently took no note of his doings. He was given a free hand to persecute his seductive plan without let or hindrance. All the merciful delays of justice, Lucifer pointed Two, was evidence of the inability of the government of the Paradise Sons to stop the rebellion. He would openly defy and arrogantly challenge Michael, Emmanuel, and the Ancients of Days, and then point to the fact that no action ensued as positive evidence of the impotency of the universe and the super-universal governments. Gabriel was personally present throughout all this disloyal proceedings and only announced that he would in due time speak for Michael, and that all beings would be left free and unmolested in their choice, that the government of the sons of Father desired only that loyalty and devotion which was voluntary, wholeheartedly, and sophistry proof. Sophistry. Lucifer was permitted fully to establish and thoroughly to organize his rebel government before Gabriel made any effort to contest the right of secession or to counterwork the rebel propaganda. But the Constellation Fathers immediately confined the action of this disloyal personalities to the system of Satania. Nevertheless, this period of delay was a time of great trial and testing to the loyal beings of Satania. All was chaotic for a few years, and there was great confusion on the mansion worlds. The nature of conflict. Upon the outbreak of the Satania Rebellion, Michael took counsel of his Paradise brother Emmanuel. Following the momentous conference, Michael announced that he would pursue the same policy which had characterized his dealings with similar upheavals in the past, an attitude of non-interference. At the time of this rebellion, and two which preceded it, there was no absolute and personal sovereign authority in the universe of Nebadon. Michael ruled by divine right as vice-regent of the universal Father, but not yet in his own personal right. He had not completed his bestowal career. He had not yet been vested with all power in heaven and on earth. From the outbreak of rebellion to this day of his enthronement as sovereign ruler of Nebadon, Michael never interfered with the rebel forces of Lucifer. They were allowed to run a free course for almost 200,000 years of Urantia time. Christ Michael now has ample power and authority to deal promptly, even summarily, with such outbreaks of disloyalty, but we doubt that this sovereign authority would lead him to act differently if another such upheaval would occur. Since Michael elected to remain aloof from the actual warfare of Lucifer Rebellion, Gabriel called his personal staff together on Urantia, and in council with the Most Highs, plural, elected to assume command of the loyal hosts of Satania. Michael remained on Salvington while Michael proceeded to Jerusalem, and establishing himself on the sphere dedicated to the Father, the same universal Father, whose personality Lucifer and Satan had questioned. In the presence of the foregathered hosts of loyal personalities, he displayed the banner of Michael, the material emblem of the Trinity government of all creation, and the three azure blue concentric circles on a white background. The Lucifer emblem was a banner of white with one red circle, in the center of which a black solid circle appeared. There was war in heaven. Michael's commander and his angels fought against the dragon, Lucifer, Satan, and the apostate princes. And the dragon and his rebellious angels fought, but prevailed not. The war in heaven was not a physical battle, as such a conflict might be conceived on Urantia. In the early days of the struggle, Lucifer held forth continuously in the planetary amphitheater. Gabriel conducted an unceasing exposure of the rebel sophistries from the headquarters taken up near at hand. The various personalities present on the sphere were in doubt as to their attitude, would journey back and forth between these discussions until they arrived at a final decision. But this war in heaven was very terrible and very real, while displaying none of the barbarities so characteristic of physical warfare. On the immature worlds, this conflict was far more deadly. Material life is in jeopardy in material combat, but the war in heaven was fought in terms of life eternal. Again, I'm urging everybody to just take your biases out of the equation right now. Flip the script. Flip it. If you don't look at both sides, you're not going to comprehend. Flip the script. What happens if the people who channeled this work, who were the ones that came through, were in fact the ones that wanted you enslaved, that wanted your soul to keep coming back and coming back and coming back and coming back and not move up? Think about it. A loyal seraphic commander. There were many noble and inspiring acts of devotion and loyalty which were performed by numerous personalities during the interim between the outbreak of hostilities and the arrival of a new system ruler and his staff. But the most thrilling of all these daring feats of devotion was the courageous conduct of Urantia, the second in command of the Satania headquarters Seraphim. At the outbreak of rebellion on Jerusalem, the head of the seraphic host joined the Lucifer cause. This no doubt explains why such a large number of the fourth order, the system administrator Seraphim, went astray. The seraphic leader was spiritually blinded by the brilliant personality of Lucifer. His charming ways fascinated the lower orders of celestial beings. They simply could not comprehend that it was possible for such a dazzling personality to go wrong. Or did he go wrong? Not long since, in describing the experiences associated with the onset of the Lucifer Rebellion, Manitoa Tia said, but my most exhilarating moment was a thrilling adventure connected with the Lucifer Rebellion when a second seraphic commander, I refused to participate in the project insult to Michael, and the powerful rebels sought my destruction by means of the liaison forces they had arranged. There was a tremendous upheaval in Jerusalem, but not a single loyal seraphim was harmed. Upon the default of my immediate superior, it devolved upon me to assume command of the angelic hosts of Jerusalem as the titular director of the confused seraphic affairs of the system. I was morally upheld by the Melchizedeks, ably assisted by a majority of the material sons, deserted by a tremendous group of my own order, but magnificently supported by the ascendant mortals on Jerusalem. Having been automatically thrown out of the constellation circuits by the secession of Lucifer, we were dependent on the loyalty of our intelligent corps, who forwarded calls for help to Urantia from the nearby system of Rantulia, and where we found the kingdom of order, the intelligence of loyalty, and the spirit of truth were inherently triumphant over rebellion. Self-assertion and so-called personal liberty were able to carry on until the arrival of a new system sovereign, the worthy successor of Lucifer. And immediately thereafter, I was assigned to the corps of the Melchizedek receivership of Urantia, assuring jurisdiction over the loyal seraphic orders on the world of the traitorous Calistigia, who had proclaimed his sphere a member of the newly projected system of liberated worlds and emancipated personalities. proposed in an infamous Declaration of Liberty issued by Lucifer in his call to the liberty-loving, free thinking, and forward-looking intelligences of misruled and mal-administered worlds of Satania. This angel is still in service on Urantia, functioning as an associate chief of Seraphim. Quite intriguing. History of the Rebellion. The Lucifer Rebellion was a system-wide 37 succeeding planetary princes swung their world administrations largely to the side of the Arch Rebel. Only on Panoptia did the planetary prince fail to carry his people with him. On this world, under the guidance of the Melchizedeks, the people rallied to the support of Michael. Eleonora, a young woman of that mortal realm, grasped the leadership of the human races, and not a single soul on that strife-torn world enlisted under the Lucifer banner. And ever since have those loyal Panoptians serve on the 7th Jerusalem transition world as the caretakers and builders on the Father sphere and its surrounding 7 detention worlds. The Panoptians not only act as the literal custodians of these worlds, non-scaffolding custodians, but they also execute the personal orders of Michael for the embellishment of these spheres for some future and unknown use. They do this work as they tarry en route to Urantia. Throughout this period, Caligastia was advocating the cause of Lucifer on Urantia. The Melchizedeks ably opposed the apostate planetary prince, but the sophistries of unbridled liberty and the delusions of self-assertion had every opportunity for deceiving the primitive peoples of a young and undeveloped world. All secession propaganda had to be carried on by personal effort because the broadcast service and all other avenues of interplanetary communication were suspended by the action of the system circuit supervisors. Upon the actual outbreak of the insurrection, the entire system of Satania was isolated in both the constellation and the universe circuits. During this time, all incoming and outgoing messages were dispatched by seraphic agents and solitary messengers. The circuits to the fallen worlds were also cut off, so that Lucifer could not utilize this avenue for furtherance of his nefarious scheme. And these circuits will not be restored so long as the Arch Rebel lives within the confines of Satania. This was a Lananadak rebellion, the higher orders of local universe sonship, and did not join the Lucifer secession. Although a few of the life carriers stationed on the rebel planets were somewhat influenced by the rebellion of the disloyal princes, none of the Trinidad's sons went astray. The Melchizedek's archangels and the brilliant evening stars were all loyal to the Michael, and with Gabriel valiantly contended for the Father's will and the Son's rule. No beings of paradise origin were involved in disloyalty. Together with the solitary messengers, they took up headquarters on the world of the spirit and remained under the leadership of the faithful of days of Urantia. None of the conciliators apostatized, nor did a single one of the celestial recorders go astray, but a heavy toll was taken on the Urantia companions and the mansion world teachers. Of the supreme order of seraphim, not an angel was lost, but a considerable group of the next order. The superior were deceived and ensnared. Likewise, a few of the third or supervisor order of angels were misled. But the terrible breakdown came in the 4th group, the administrator angels, whose seraphim, who are normally assigned to the duties of the system capitals, Manotia, saved almost 2/3 of them, but slightly over 1/3 followed their chief into rebel ranks. 1/3 of the Jerusalem cherubim attached to the administrator angels were lost with their disloyal seraphim. Of the planetary angelic helpers, those assigned to the material sons, about 1/3 were deceived, and almost 10% of the transition ministers were ensnared. In symbol, John saw this when he wrote of the greater red dragon, saying, and his tail drew a third part of the stars of heaven and cast them down in darkness. The greatest loss occurred in the angelic ranks, but most of the lower orders of intelligence were involved in disloyalty. Of the 681,217 material sons lost in Satania, 95% were casualties of the Lucifer Rebellion. Large numbers of midway creatures were lost on those individual planets whose planetary princes joined the Lucifer cause. In many respects, this rebellion was the most widespread and disastrous of all such occurrences in Abaddon. More personalities were involved in this insurrection than in both of the others, and it is their everlasting dishonor that the emissaries of Lucifer and Satan spared not the infant training schools on the finaliter cultural planet, but rather sought to corrupt these developing minds and mercy savage from the evolutionary worlds. Now, once again, flip it. Just think, flip it. If Lucifer wants liberty and independent thinking and thought, what are these beings doing and what is happening on our planet now? Just want you to think. You don't have to agree with me. The ascending mortals were vulnerable, but they withstood the sophistries of rebellion better than the lower spirits. While many on the lower mansion worlds, those who had not obtained final fusion with their adjusters, fell, it is recorded to the glory of the wisdom of the ascension scheme that not a single member of the Satania ascendant citizen resident on Jerusalem participated in the Lucifer Rebellion. Hour by hour and day by day, the broadcast stations of Abaddon were thronged by the anxious watchers of every imaginable class of celestial intelligence, who intently pursued the bulletins of the Satania Rebellion and rejoiced as the reports continuously narrated the unswerving loyalty of the ascended mortals, who, under their Melchizedek leadership, successfully withstood the combined and protracted efforts of all the subtle evil forces which were swiftly gathered around the banners of secession and sin. It was over 2 years of system time from the beginning of the war in heaven and the installations of Lucifer's successor. But at the last new sovereign came, landing on the sea of glass with his staff. I was among the reserves mobilized on Identia by Gabriel, and I remember well the first message of Lana Forge to the constellation father of Norlaladek. It read, not a single Jerusalem citizen was lost. Every ascendant mortal survived the fiery trial and emerged from the crucial test triumphant and altogether victorious. And on Salvington, Uversa, and Paradise went this message of assurance that the survival experience of mortal ascension is the greatest security against rebellion and surest safeguard against sin. The noble Jerusalem band of faithful mortals numbered just about 187,432,811. Regardless on the numbers, and if I'm reading them right or wrong, I could care less. What is happening now in our paradigm? Good versus evil. It's biblical. Everything is biblical. Everything is happening according to prophecies. But look at the galactic prophecies. Look at what is playing in a theater near you in a densities. Just trying to open up your perception. because this is literally happening now. Just we can't all see the other densities and vehicles that are being disposed of. And again, flip the script. What happens if evil is really the good guys and the good guys are being portrayed as good guys or bad guys? With the arrival of Lana Forge, the Ark rebels were dethroned and shorn of all governing powers, though they were permitted freely to go about Jerusalem, the Urantia spheres, and even to the individual inhabited worlds. They continued their deceptive and seductive efforts to confuse and mislead the minds of men and angels. But as concerned their work on the administrative Mount of Jerusalem, their place was found no more. While Lucifer was deprived of all administrative authority in Satania, there then existed no local universe power nor tribunal which could detain or destroy this wicked rebel. At the time, Michael was not a sovereign ruler. The ancients of days sustained the Constellation Fathers in their seizure of the system government, but they have never handed down any subsequent decision in the many appeals still pending with regard to the present status and future disposition of Lucifer, Satan, and their associates. Thus, were these Ark rebels allowed to roam an entire system to seek further penetration of their doctrines of discontent and self-assertion, but in almost 200,000 Urantia years, they have been unable to deceive another world. No Satanic worlds have been lost since the fall of the 37, not even those younger worlds people since the day of the rebellion. The Son of Man on Urantia. Lucifer and Satan freely roamed the Satania system until the completion of the bestowal mission of Michael on Urantia. They were last on your world together during the time of their combined assault upon the Son of Man. One being Enki, one being Enlil. And who had relations with the Son of Man, who spawned the Nephilim? Satan, not Lucifer. Lucifer abstained himself. Formerly, when the planetary prince, the Son of God, were periodically assembled, Satan came also, claiming that he represented all the isolated worlds of the fallen planetary princes. But he has not been accorded such liberty on Jerusalem since Michael's terminal bestowal. Subsequent to their effort to corrupt Michael, when in the bestowal flesh, all sympathy for Lucifer and Satan has perished throughout all Satania, that is outside the isolated worlds of sin. The Babylonian moon god, Sin. The bestowal of Michael terminated the Lucifer Rebellion in all Satania aside from the planets of the apostate planetary princes. And this was the significance of Jesus' personal experience just before his death in the flesh, when one day exclaimed to his disciples, "And I beheld Satan fall as lightning from heaven." And he came with Lucifer to Urantia for the last crucial struggle. The Son of Man was confident of success, and he knew that his triumph on your world would forever settle the status of his age-long enemies, not only in Satania, but also in the order of two systems where sin had entered. There was survival for mortals and security for angels when your master, in reply to the survival of mortals and security for, I read that again. Lucifer proposals, calmly with the divine assurance replied, get you behind me, Satan. That was in principle the real end of the Lucifer Rebellion. True, the Urantia tribunals have not yet rendered an executive decision regarding the appeal of Gabriel praying for the destruction of the rebels. By such a decree will no doubt be forthcoming in the fullness of time, since the first step in the hearing of the case has already been taken. Calastigio was recognized by the Son of Man as the technical prince of Urantia up to the near time of his death. Says Jesus, Now is the judgment of this world. Now shall the prince of this world be cast down, and then still nearer and complexion of his life work be announced. The prince of this world is judged, and is this same dethroned and discredited prince who was termed God of Urantia. Last act of Michael before leaving Urantia was to offer mercy to Calistigia and Dalastigia, but they spun his tender proffer. Calistigia, your prostate planetary prince is still free on Urantia to prosecute his nefarious designs, but he has absolutely no power to enter the minds of men, neither can he draw near to their souls to tempt or corrupt them, unless they really desire to be cursed with the wickedness presence. Before the bestowal of Michael, these rulers of darkness sought to maintain their authority on Urantia, and they persistently withstood the minor and subordinate celestial personalities. But since the day of Pentecost, this traitorous Calistigia and his equally contemptible associate Daligastia are servile before the divine majesty of the paradise thought adjusters and the protective spirit of truth and spirit of Michael, which have been poured out upon all flesh. But even so, no fallen spirit ever did have the power to invade the minds or harness the souls of the children of God. Neither Satan nor Calistigia could ever touch or approach the faith sons of God. Faith is an effective armor against sin and inequity. It is true, he who is born of God keeps himself, and the wicked and one touches him not. In general, when weak and dissolute mortals are supposed to be under the influence of devils and demons, they are merely being dominated by their own inherent debased tendencies, being laid away by their own natural propensities. The devil has been given a great deal of credit for evil, which does not belong to him. Caligastia has been comparatively potent since the cross of Christ. Present status of the rebellion. Early in the days of Lucifer Rebellion, salvation was offered all rebels by Michael. To all who show proof of sincere repentance, he offered upon his obtainment of complete universal sovereignty, forgiveness, and reinstatement in some form of universe service. None of the leaders accepted this merciful proffer, but thousands of the angels and lower orders of celestial beings, including hundreds of the material sons and daughters, accepted the mercy proclaimed by the Pantheopatins and were given rehabilitation at the time of Jesus' resurrection 1900 years ago. These beings have since been transferred to the Father's world of Jerusalem, where they must be held technically until the Urantia courts hand down a decision in the matter of Gabriel versus Lucifer. And they work together. That's funny. But no one doubts that when the annihilation verdict is issued, these repentant and salvaged personalities will be exempt from the decree and extinction. These prohibitionary souls now labor with the Pantheons in the work of caring for the Father's world. The arch deceiver has never been on Urantia since the days when he sought to turn back Michael from the purpose to complete the bestowal and to establish himself finally and securely as an unqualified ruler of Nebadon. Upon Michael's becoming the settled head of the universe of Nebadon, Lucifer was taken into custody by the agents of Urantia Ancients of Days and has since been a prisoner on satellite number 1 of the Father's group of the transition spheres of Jerusalem. And here the rulers of other worlds and systems behold the end of the unfaithful sovereign of Satania. Paul knew of the status of these rebellious leaders following Michael's bestowal, for he wrote of Caligastia's chief as spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. Michael, upon assuming the supreme sovereignty of Nebadon, petitioned the Ancients of Days for authority to intern all personalities concerned in Lucifer Rebellion Pending the rulings of the super universe tribunals of the case of Gabriel versus Lucifer, placed on records of the Urantia Supreme Court almost 200,000 years ago, as you reckon time, concerning the system capital group, the Ancients of Days, granted the Michael petition with but a single exception. Satan was allowed to make periodic visits to the apostate prince on the fallen worlds until another son of God should be accepted by such apostate worlds, or until such time as the courts of Urantia should begin the adjudication of the case of Gabriel versus Lucifer. Satan could come to Urantia because you had no son of standing in residence, neither planetary prince nor magisterial son. Melchizedek has been proclaimed vice-urgent planetary prince of Urantia, and the opening of the case of Gabriel versus Lucifer has signalized the inauguration of temporary planetary regimes on all the isolated worlds. It is true that Satan did periodically visit Caligastia and others of the fallen princes right up until the time of the presentation of these revelations, when there occurred the first hearing of Gabriel's plea for the annihilation of the arch rebels. Satan is now unqualified, detained on the Jerusalem prison worlds. Since Michael's final bestowal, no one in all Satania had desired to go to the prison worlds to minister to the interned rebels, and no more beings have been won to the deceiver's cause. For 1900 years, the status has been unchanged. We do not look for a removal of the present Satania restrictions until the Ancients of Days made final disposition of the arch rebels. The system circuits will not be reinstated so long as Lucifer lives. Meantime, he is wholly inactive. The rebellion has ended on Jerusalem. It ends on the fallen worlds as fast as divine sons arrive. We believe that all rebels who will ever accept mercy have done so. We await the flashing broadcast that will deprive these traitors of personality existence. We anticipate the verdict of Urantia will be announced by the executionary broadcast, which will affect the annihilation of these interned rebels. Then you will look for their place, but they shall not be found. And they who know you among the worlds will be astonished at you. You have been a terror and never shall be any more. And thus shall all these unworthy traitors become as though they had not been. All awaited the Urantia decree. But for ages, the 7 prison worlds of spiritual darkness in Satania have constituted a solemn warning to the Nebadon, eloquently and effectively proclaiming the great truth that the way of the transgressor is hard, that within every sin is concealed the seed of its own destruction, that the wages of sin is death. Presented by Mano Vendent Melchizedek, one time attached to the receivership of Urantia. And that ends that paper. And we'll go into the next paper, Problems of the Lucifer Rebellion. But I have problems of my own with this bigly. I know this was long, so I'm going to cut it a little on the short side, but I just want to convey the fact that Council of Nicaea, where did the concept of sin come from besides a Babylonian god? We weren't inherently born of sin. Why would God do that? Why would the Supreme All, the infinite intelligence, the creative spirit, wanted us to be born of sin? We were not born of sin, in my opinion. Again, look at all their constructs, rules, prison planets. Why, if all of Source is experiencing itself through us and through all the entities above, and yes, there is a section of the universe where bad things are coexisting with us. That is real. But what they're depicting, are they the transgressors? Are they the ones who are enslaving, not allowing mortals to move forward in their progression? And as they're infighting in all the 500 million compartmentalized jobs, did things get lost in a fold? Just consider these things. As we're going forward in the book, why isn't his name Yeshua? Oh, because everybody knows him as Jesus. His name is Yeshua ben Joseph. Or his soul name, Sananda. Again, we read these channeled works. The Urtites are also fallen. The Urtites are the ones who channeled this work. And not to say that the receiver, the one who wrote it down, is evil or bad. There is no walk the middle path, because it's all good and evil, all in one shot. There is no one way or the other, because it's both. And when you learn to understand those concepts, you wake up one morning and have a really shitty day and you're just not having it. You're human. You're just not having it. Does that make you inherently a bad person? You just had a bad moment. You had a bad day. We don't judge. We shouldn't be judging. And yes, people who do heinous, horrible things should be put to justice, but that justice is heaven sent. Fifth dimensional density sent. It's very questionable. I'm just posing a lot of questions because I want you to deep dive a little deeper. And if I'm telling you about factions and I'm telling you about the beings behind these works, reverse the role and see how that applies. Take your biases out. That's another thing. A lot of people can't read something without being biased. That is hard. You want to cheer for the good guy in a book. Don't get me wrong. We all have that hero's journey that we want to walk and read down and like, but sometimes the evil that is depicted is not evil at all. It is a deceptive device to make you think. Was Lucifer wrong? And I don't necessarily resonate with him and Satan working together. Possibly, but I don't believe there was one hierarchy over another. I also believe that Satan is the god of this realm, the one who spawned us. Michael got flipped. And there is a good aspect and a bad aspect of all these figures. They're not all good and they're not all evil. So which one are you talking about? There's good Melchizedeks and there's flipped Melchizedeks. Again, I urge everybody to read the Voyagers. It just opens up your mind. Again, you don't have to comprehend at all and you don't have to agree with it, but just get a different perspective, because when we stay in a one book paradigm, we are not allowing ourselves to experience other things and other works and other perceptions because we're so closed down in the one book. Move a pen. And I mean, George Van Tassel talks about the aliens. So I just wanted to put that out there. Just as I read it for the first time a year ago, I don't remember when and how far along that I did, but I seriously tabbed it out because I was very interested in understanding their perception. Now that I have more of an informed view, I have more of a better understanding, more of different books that I've been exposed to, different pieces of literature, different in my own validations, in my own knowingness, there's problems here. And not to say it's all wrong or fabricated. There's problems with it from my perception. But that's okay if you don't agree with me. Sending each and every one of you light, love, protection, and shielding. Please have a wonderful rest of your week. There's some crazy storms incoming. Please be safe if you're in that impact zone, which is from Florida all the way to Maine. And if you were in Canada, all the way up to Nova Scotia. So please be safe. Those of you in the drought sections, continue to be safe and hopefully nothing happens. Bubble. And I hope to see you guys on the next one. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. That really helps me, gets me in the algorithm. It gets more eyes on my work. Sharing is caring. And doing that little effort of an Amish mindset, and that Amish mindset manifested today. Amish mindset came into fruition today with the 300 Amish men moving a whole entire barn across the field. We got to do things together collectively. We can't just do them individually, because the impact of all of us is greater than just one or two. And with that, I hope to see you guys on the next one. Please be safe, be seen.